Well, hello, church. I'm excited to get to be here with you today alongside Doris here, and we're excited to continue to have a conversation with one another. We're hoping that this conversation that Doris and I have is an encouragement to you and helps you to see how we can continue to have this conversation. If you watched my devotional I made on Tuesday, I said the issues that are taking place in our country with racial injustice, it requires for us to be open and to ask questions and to hear. And what we want to be is we want to be a safe place. We want this to be a time where you can come and you can listen. But if you have questions, we want to provide a place and people where you can ask questions, especially if you don't know how to respond or what to do. And so I'm going to be asking Doris some questions. And again, this is going to be an ongoing conversation. This isn't a one-time thing where like, okay, this interview's great. Now I know exactly what to do. We're working along it together, and we hope that you see that as we have these conversations, how we encourage you to be having these conversations with others as well. So I want to jump right into it with Doris. So thanks for getting to meet with me and doing this. So as I named, like this type of conversation can be uncomfortable. People just speaking about racial injustice or speaking about these issues, they might find themselves being uncomfortable and not knowing what to say or ask. And how would you respond to someone who might feel uncomfortable and not know where to begin this conversation?
I usually wait until the individual wants to talk to me about it. They come to me. I don't force my beliefs on anyone else. But I have learned that kindness goes a long way. I also have to remember that usually the people who ask about these things, they really don't have any knowledge of the things that I've experienced in life. They don't know a lot about my culture. So my thing to other people who are trying to witness to somebody is, first you've got to be kind. You've got to let them know that unless you've walked a mile in my shoes, you really don't know what's going on. And I don't rush to judgment on anybody. I feel like that the reason I'm here for this time is because Jesus has placed me here. I didn't just arbitrarily come here and decide, oh, I'm going down there and integrate the Presbyterian Church. It's taken 58 years since we've been fighting this battle to say that we're fighting it again. And my heart just hurts. It just, I thought when I was fighting the battle that it would be so that my children or my grandchildren wouldn't have to fight this battle. But here we are. And we're back to square one with trying to reconcile our differences between the races.
You make a good point of saying, it's, helping people understand your story. Could you share a little with us? We talked last week, and you had used this phrase, being received in the Presbyterian Church. What was it like for you when you came into the Presbyterian Church, and what do you mean when you said what it was like for you to be received in the church?
When I came to the Presbyterian Church, it was just decided that I needed to change from where I was, so I came here. And the minister that was here at the time said, come see us. And I thought, what does he mean by that? Does he really mean come to church and visit? And this was like 1968. And so I hesitated for a while. I prayed about it, thought about it. And I grabbed up my girls one Sunday morning and I came. And of course, I was greeted cordially by the ushers at the door, invited me in. I really expected to be turned away. I really did. And but they said, come in, glad to have you, and took a seat. Few people, just a very few people, even spoke to me. The minister called me that Monday morning and asked that question, how were you received? And I told him, I think I was received well. I mean, I didn't think that anyone wanted me out. Maybe so, but no one expressed that. Like I said, a few people talked to me. But I kept coming. And then about the third time I came, I had a child that was a year old. And I was greeted at the door and said, "Would you like to put your daughter in the nursery?" Boy, I thought, I've arrived. So I didn't know the church had a nursery, didn't know where it was. He said, "Well, come on, I'll escort you to the nursery." Put my child in the nursery. And then a few years later, I won't say a few years later, maybe a year later, I was asked by the choir director to join the choir. And I don't think he had ever heard me sing, but apparently someone in the congregation told him, they heard me sing. So I joined the choir. And that was before I even joined the church. And then, of course, later, when I joined the church, there were many times when I could have just walked away because of the stares I would get. And one Sunday, I have to tell this story because I don't think I've ever told it to anyone. That was when we had the overflow room in the sanctuary. We had an overflow room. They hadn't remodeled it the way it is now. And I was sitting in that overflow room, and from the previous Sunday, there was a bulletin in the chair beside me, and I picked the bulletin up just to look at it. And apparently 2 girls were sitting over there, and one was writing a note to the other one, and she said, "Look, there's a Niger. That's spelling correct." She said, "Look, there's an Niger." And the other girl said, "Yeah, that's good, I think." And I was like, wow, and I held on to that bulletin for a number of years, but it got lost in somewhere, moving, I guess. But I took the 2 things there together. One had an opinion that maybe this was wrong. The other one said, "I think that's nice." I have no idea who those girls were at the time. I still don't know who they were. But I just feel like that the Lord meant for me to see that so that I could see that there were some friends in the church. Now, this was the youth group then. And so that's why I always say, how was I received? Did they invite me to come join the activities of the church or the small groups of the church, put my baby in the nursery? Yes. Took a little while, but yes. So, I can't say that I was rejected or turned away. I was received well by the congregation.
I'm sorry to hear that was the way of being received. Something you said about those 2 girls, the kind of different opinions, I think with what's taking place today, and as we have these conversations, some might say, this isn't really about racism. They might see the riots, they might see things that are going on, and they're like, this isn't about racism. What would you say to them? I
would say, yes, it is about race. We have a race problem in America. I don't know how anyone with eyes to see and ears to hear that can deny that we have a race problem in America. Maybe we don't have a big race problem here in our church because I don't feel it anymore like I did when I first joined. I have many, many friends here, many Christian people, been invited to, homes and do things with activities and so forth with them. I'm very comfortable. But we have a race problem in America. And we have ignored it for so long till we just assume in our own minds that we don't have this problem. Because everybody's just sort of been silent and put it on the back burner, and no one wants to discuss it. Because then you have to admit that you realize we have a race problem. And I feel that more could be done by Christian people to speak up. And if you're a fan of Facebook, you will see that we have a race problem in America. I have read so many posts, good and bad, about things that's going on. And they just assume that if you're protesting, you're looting and rioting. And that's not the beginning of a protest. It's when we did it in the 60s and the 70s, we had, we were doing it nonviolent. The nonviolent method, because we were led by Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and that's what he taught us, to be nonviolent. This generation has taken it to a new level because all during this time, we've not been really heard. In 1954, the bill was passed by Congress to desegregate all schools. In Mississippi, it was not until 1968 that they started it. And they would desegregate 4 grades at a time. Because Vanessa, my oldest daughter, was one of the first children to attend a desegregated school in Moss Point. They did the first 4 grades. Then the next year they added 4 more grades until they got to the high school. And then the high school kids rejected it, and they started a riot. They weren't just protesting. It was an outright knock them down, drag them out, pulling them off the grounds, and just, really outrageous. So that's why I said, I was fighting the battle back then, and now it's like come back to haunt us, because all during this time we've not continued communications and dialogues. We've not sat around the table and say, what do you think about this? Is this constitute making you feel second class? Are we doing this right? Is this pleasing in God's sight? We've just let it alone. And it was like leaves burning, smoldering. Then the fire comes up. Eventually, that's what's going to happen. And we need to get back to the old-fashioned sitting around the table and talking about it.
Yeah, that was my question, because I think the next question was kind of leading to of like, people could see riots and stuff in other places, and we're like, well, in our church we might not have that. How do we avoid being complacent and just sitting back and like, this isn't really our problem, this isn't our deal, it's not so bad here? How do we avoid that?
Okay, I was listening to some show the other night, and they were talking about when a house is on fire and the fire truck comes to put the house out, put the fire out, that they don't say, well, we got to water down all these other houses so everybody will have some water equally. But your house is not burning down, so we got to save the house that's burning down. And you haven't experienced this. You've heard about it because you are of a different generation. I tried my best to make sure that my children knew about what happened back then, and the fact that we have some freedoms that we didn't have back then. We now enjoy walking into the restaurant and sitting down, whereas I used to pass by the restaurant and look in the window, see these people enjoying a meal with linen tablecloths on the table, and I thought, boy, that's good, but I can't go in there. So now that we have a little more freedoms, everybody thinks, well, things are great. Things are really great, and compared to what they used to be, they are great. But we can't force that on this generation because they didn't experience that back then. And they've grown up with everything being there. Some people feel entitled. We know some of that's wrong. We know we need to educate people as to what happened then and what's happening now. So, if you don't do that, you're going to become complacent. You're just going to say, oh, everything's great now compared to what it used to be, so let's don't worry about it. But this generation is not having that. They want more.
As we kind of look more at this generation, we kind of start focusing and not just saying like, oh, that's out there. As we kind of internalize and look at what's taking place even within here, what are some things that you're hearing inside the church that you might say is, hey, this is causing division?
Number one is politics. I hear within the church politics. Everybody's got a preference on, their political parties, and it causes strife within the church. I stopped going to a particular Sunday school class because that's what they wanted to do at the outset. You go in there and sit down and you're waiting to get started. Everybody want to discuss politics. And I don't like that, because if I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican, then we go finger pointing. And I don't know why you want to be a Democrat. I wouldn't be a Democrat. And we can't do that within the church. It causes division every time. I didn't go to that Sunday school class anymore. I said, well, I just best remove myself from that. But no matter if it's a small group and we're talking, politics will come up. And I have just learned to remove myself and just not discuss it, because I'm usually a minority in that conversation. So I can't stop you from being what you want to be. And no matter what I say in defense of what I am and why I am that way, it's not going to change things. So instead of us sitting down and talking about it, that offends me. And we're not going to change it. We can't change anybody's heart. God has to do that. We can't love another person unless God comes into our hearts and give us that love. And until we love each other more, care more about each other, it's going to always be that same problem. Love is the key.